The Danish novel series Department Q has already been adapted into a series of films, but now we're getting an English-language Netflix adaptation in the form of a Scottish series. Department Q stars Matthew Goode and follows the same storyline as the first novel, The Keeper of Lost Causes. So how does this remake hold up? DCI Carl Morck is a brilliant cop, but a terrible colleague. After a shooting that leaves a young police constable dead and his partner paralyzed, he finds himself exiled to the basement and the sole member of Department Q, a newly formed cold case unit. When the stone-cold trail of a prominent civil servant who disappeared several years ago starts to heat up, Carl is back doing what he does best, rattling cages and refusing to take no for an answer. So really, this 9-episode series is just a much longer version of the Danish movie. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. In addition to Goode, this stars Alexei Manvilov, Kate Dickie, Leah Byrne, Chloe Perry, Jamie Seaves, Kelly MacDonald, Shirley Henderson, and Kai Alexander. And because the series takes about 9-ish hours to binge, each of the characters gets the time to be fleshed out, not rushing their background or their roles within the story. Now, obviously, some get a lot more depth than others, but I never found myself wondering about a character or what their purpose was within the narrative. Now, Matthew Goode as Carl Morck is just a brilliant casting job. Goode is grumpy, rude, bitingly sarcastic, but also wickedly clever. And right from the start, we get to see why he's as salty as he is, walking around just pissed off at the world. And for as much of a reluctant hero as he can be, the character never crosses the line where he becomes despicable or irredeemable. The gruffness, it's understandable, and despite his sandpaper personality, Goode is able to infuse bits of wit, even compassionate softness when it's called for. Another standout is Alexei Manvilov, playing Akram, a tech consultant who sort of inserts himself into Morck's world and into the cold case department. Manvilov is this even-keeled dude with a harried and mysterious past, but one that he freely shares even when Morck doesn't pay attention. And the way Akram complements Morck is just outstanding, becoming the necessary foil within the storyline to not only showcase Morck's eventual growth, but also the shortcomings that Morck displays because of the trauma he's working through. And I love how both characters have incredible intelligence, but they each draw from different perspectives and experiences, allowing the story to avoid having these competing similar character arcs. Now, two more huge standouts within the show are Chloe Perry and Kai Alexander, for completely different reasons. Perry portrays the civil servant who disappeared, building out the past through flashbacks, and she has to generate a character who is on the brink of collapse and despair, but one who also still maintains perseverance and strength. And she's not necessarily a likable character all of the time, just thanks to some of the things that we learn about her, but Perry manages to elicit sympathy and compassion for the character without it feeling cheap or unearned. And then we got Kai Alexander. He's portraying the younger brother of another character. And while he's not in the series an overwhelming amount, there is a specific moment when he is absolutely spellbinding. He's being video interviewed, and the expressions and responses that Alexander crafts just pierce right through the screen, and I think could make you squirm in your seat. Now, the interview is all the more captivating just thanks to the delivery in which we see it. We don't get to see the interviewer, only really Alexander's character answering questions to the camera. But occasionally our perspective will shift to see the other character's reactions to watching this interview. And I think these are included to make us, as the audience, feel sort of a camaraderie with the other players. Like, we're all seeing this, right? Now, even though the storyline does provide a ton of depth on the characters, the pacing does come across as slightly uneven as we get towards the middle of the series. Now, some of this is just because we're watching Morck relive some trauma through flashbacks or dreams. Other times, it's because we're being shown further recollections by other characters about events, even though we've already seen them. Now, sometimes these are shorter, not fully repeating this exact same length of sequence. Other times, it shows even more, making that scene longer. Now, the repetition, it does get a bit tiring and noticeable. I mean, at least if you're binging it like I did. Now, if you are spacing out the viewing, then maybe some of the repeated sequences are going to work to remind you of elements that happened in a few episodes prior. I guess, just if you binge, the repetition makes the show longer. If you're not binging, then the scenes work to keep you engaged. The filming for this is excellent and immersive, many times using some of the framing techniques that I absolutely love about UK cinema. Those wide shots that feature more of the surroundings than the character, often putting the actor in the bottom third of the frame. Now, these aren't overly used, but they provide the needed visual variety. And the visual style of the series itself is somewhat gritty, utilizing the beautiful grey skies of Scotland to convey this cold and apprehensive vibe, along with some film grain that creates a seedy and sketchy environment in which bad people lurk. And that maintains the dark aura that not only surrounds the plot, but also the emotional trauma that Morck is working through. Now, as far as the mystery goes, this is pretty solid. Even though I am familiar with the story, I couldn't remember exactly who the villain was. And the show does an excellent job at obscuring it while also inserting the necessary misdirections. There are several plausible suspects, and even though we get some reveals before the final episode, that does not mean that the tension and suspense are diminished. As the final few episodes arrive, there's this effective sense of urgency, and that only builds once we get some of the reveals. Now, I found myself scooting towards the edge of the couch as I was watching, nervous from the anticipation that was coming just because of the mixture of excitement and dread. And while there is this central case that Morck and his team are pursuing, there are other side mysteries that are at play, some of which interweave into the main arc, with others creating relevant future intrigue. And thankfully, these also didn't feel like weird tangents. Instead, they were complementary to the character building. Now, I was fairly skeptical going into the series, not because I didn't think Matthew Goode could pull off a great performance, but instead, we already have a series of films that are adapted from the novels. And the movies, they're in Danish, just like the novels, so the translation works well. But now, after binging the 9 somewhat long episodes, this was an excellent adaptation that maintains the spirit and direction of the source material while basically only changing the locale, at least in any ways that really matter. And Goode is wonderful in the lead role, and then perfectly complemented by the surrounding cast, each providing indelible performances that enhance the storytelling while also providing depth, wit, and smarts. The pacing, it's somewhat uneven, especially when the show employs multiple flashbacks, but the mystery is tight and concealed well, delivering mounting apprehension mixed with urgent anxiety. And despite this being a long show, it is a great one to put on your watch list. There is sex, some nudity, a ton of profanity, and then some very gruesome violence. I give Department Q 4.5 out of 5 couches. So have you read the novels or seen the Danish films? Do you have a favorite maybe in the series? I'd love to hear which you like in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.